Final Fantasy II, originally released in Japan in mid-December 1988 on the Famicom, wasn't released outside of Japan until its European remake release on the 14th of March 2003. And this release was in the works for the American market, but due to the original game's age and the arrival of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, Square's North American subsidiary focused on bringing the most recent Final Fantasy release to the States instead, which happened to be Final Fantasy IV. To prevent confusion, an act which actually led to even more confusion, the Final Fantasy IV release in the US was actually renamed to Final Fantasy II. Final Fantasy II was re-released in Japan for its Famicom cartridge when the game was paired with its prequel Final Fantasy I, and then the game lay dormant until 7 years later in 2001, where it was released on the 1:1 colour in Japan. Since then it has hit the PlayStation, the Game Boy Advance, and most recently the PlayStation Portable. The PlayStation 1 remake was the easiest format for me to capture footage from, but bear in mind the screens you saw in the previous part and the ones in this part have been recorded from a PlayStation 1 emulator. Final Fantasy II's story begins as the three main characters, Firion, Maria and Gus, are fleeing the Black Knights of the Palmatian Empire with their friend Leon. The game actually starts in a rather unique way. You find yourselves in a losing battle. Defeat is the only possible outcome of this combat. In a bold attempt at making Final Fantasy II more innovative and unique, Square decided a radical change was due in the combat system. The result is one of the most irritating combat systems ever created. There is no experience points or levels. Instead, the game employed a use-based system. As characters used a specific weapon, say swords, that character's skill in swords increased. For example, the more damage a character had suffered, the more hit points that character would gradually gain. Final Fantasy II's innovations extended to character interaction and employed the use of a keyword system in which words could be memorised and discussed with other characters to progress the storyline.
A game of firsts, Final Fantasy II introduced many things that would later be used in the majority of the games to follow. Sid marks his first appearance in the series here as a friendly fellow in the local pub who offers to ferry you around in his airship. Temporary characters are also first introduced in Final Fantasy II. Aside from the three main characters, Firion, Maria and Gus, an additional 6 characters join your party as you progress through the game. These are Gordon, Joseph, Layla, Mindu and Richard Highwind, who was renamed to Gareth in the various remakes. Leon is the last person to join your party. This game marks the introduction of magic points, or MP, into the Final Fantasy series. Another first in here is the ability to target one or multiple targets with your spells. You'll also find Phoenix Downs in the local shops for the first time in the Final Fantasy series. And finally, Chocobos make their introduction to the Final Fantasy series as a mode of quick transport across the world map.
Final Fantasy Legend was the next game chronologically released bearing the Final Fantasy name, but the name is the only thing that this game has in common with the series. Final Fantasy Legend is actually the first part of the Saga series, which is quite popular in Japan, but was given the Final Fantasy name outside of Japan to increase sales and interest. For this reason I shall only mention the game's existence before moving on.